Welcome back to another episode of Light Beer, Dark Money. I'm your humble host, Chris Clements, and this is not Sean Noble next to me. This is Danny Seiden, not Seiden for all you politicos out there who mispronounce it. But for some reason, it was the Seiden was in my brain. I had to ask him. It's Seiden.
There is no phonetic justification for pronouncing my name Seiden. There's nothing you've learned in school. There's nothing.
It's E-I, not I-E.
Seiden would be like the only acceptable mispronunciation. But
Yes, but you are the president and CEO of the Arizona Chamber of Commerce, the one pro-business entity in this fair state that is keeping this state afloat. Because certainly the legislature hasn't figured out how to keep the state afloat, and our fair governor, who relies on her iPad for all her brilliant ideas, is not one keeping the state afloat.
You know,
in fact, we still don't have a budget.
But to be fair, and again, that governor and the very conservative state Senate worked on a budget that was ready to go. Now that the House is feeling the need to get their adjustments on it, and it's all happening today. We're watching it go through rules.
Now, is it
right
true
now.
the House was not consulted? We talked about this in our show the other day, and the House felt slighted in some ways, that they had no consultation in the budget at hand.
You know, there's disputes on whether or not that's true, and I'll let my friends at the legislature,
the egos of the legislature.
Yeah, but what I will say. One thing is clear. The way the Senate has done the budget and divided government time, Chris, is it's this, I call it the allowance model, which I don't love, right?
Yes.
That they look at what the revenues have brought in and what the surplus is, whether it's one time ongoing, and then they allot it per senator.
Do we still have a surplus?
Yeah, we still have a surplus. You know, not as big.
Because we've been on like a spending binge over the last several years.
We have, and it's wild.
I mean, God bless your former boss, Doug Ducey, for leaving us with flat taxes, number one.
Yes.
And sound economic growth, only to have the legislature sort of spend it all away.
That's right. This allowance model, they took a $2 billion surplus left by Governor Ducey, which was meant to be the bridge for the flat tax, for ESAs, for everything. And they spent it down on a lot of pet projects. And, you know, that's how you get votes, I guess. But the House, to their credit, doesn't like that model, whereas the Senate does. And that's why I think they just stayed out of it. Whereas President Peterson's like, we're moving forward. We have a deal with the governor. And the House put themselves into a very tough box that they're working their way out of right now.
Yeah. So what's your prediction, prognosis?
It will
get gets done.
It will get done, Chris. And here's why. And this is a very important note. You know, it used to be all politics is local, right? But now all politics is national. We see so many people wanting to copy what's happening in D.C. And this idea that we can have a shutdown like they do in D.C., it's not true. I mean, the shutdown in Arizona will be very consequential.
Yeah, we heard that there's this idea of having to shut down, and that's not only not constitutional, it would put the state in
a huge problem. And
in disarray.
We're having such success in economic momentum. All those things would be put on pause. We will look, you know, like the game can't shoot straight to, God, I just got back from, every other year Arizona hosts something at the Paris Air Show. And because we're now in the top 5 in the country for aerospace defense. And so we go there, we show what Arizona has to offer, and we're bringing business back. I mean, the Netherlands is up to $2.6 billion in trade with Arizona.
That's great.
Huge success. And they don't want to see a government shut down at the state level. That means something to them. You know, they don't care about the political games and who's winning on Twitter. They just want to know that where they're investing billions and billions of dollars is a good idea.
Yeah, because it's not like the state can just like tap into its, blank checkbook and pay everybody what they need to be paid, like the federal government.
No, that's correct. You know, in the past, you would find state employees getting paid on credit cards. It's just embarrassing. It really is. It's embarrassing. Think about it like a household. You have to have that budget. You have to have that money coming in. You have to have it allotted. So this will get done. And, again, I think the big winners will be, I have to be very honest, I think Governor Katie Hobbs and Senate President Warren Peterson are having a good session in terms of just doing the job, just getting a budget across, just anything else. And it's shocking to say that, but where the governor is right now, so different than where she was a couple of years ago, getting her feet underneath her. I think she has negotiated a good budget. She didn't put a bunch of progressive social issue type things in there. She's like, I know I have split legislature. I need votes. So, yeah.
Yeah. She's been hostile, though, to the whole ESA revolution, I would say.
That is a core... that's a core thing that they oppose. They oppose, what they see as state tax dollars going to these private institutions. And that's not gonna end anytime soon. You
Yeah.
know, the parents of ESAs have gotten stronger, have gotten larger. I think the program. I'm always afraid that if they don't manage it right, it could fail in its own weight. It's always one scandal away from a national story, or we hear that it's pricing out families from having real choice. I mean, if school choice is the model and the goal. If we allow ESAs to go forward, but it turns out private schools continue to raise their tuition, and the middle class never get a real chance at it anyway. I always think, do we have the right policy? Is the policy correct on that?
Well, you bring up a really good point, and that is the concern that private schools will continue to raise tuition, cost people out, and be less and less affordable just to everyday people, everyday folks,
and less accommodating too.
Because ESAs creates a funding model that they can take advantage of.
And if we believe in the market, which we do, who's to say that a flood of more money coming to your school wouldn't create a demand issue and a supply issue, so you can start to raise prices. So I worry about that. But I think there's schools out there in our state are doing a very good job of managing it so far. You hear nothing but good things about the Brophies of the world that are, having huge percentages of scholarship kids and putting back into the community. And then
they
our
are not
charters.
cutting tuition. I can personally attest to that.
Yeah. Well, no, I don't.
Neither is All Saints.
Yeah, I was going to say I haven't
many
heard,
of them.
Neither is CLS or any of them. But meanwhile, I think the high performing charters, our public charters like Great Hearts and Basis, they're continuing to crush it academically.
Well, and they're noted as some of the best schools in the country.
Correct. Yeah.
Continuously.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the National Education Association will still continue to fight against it, and the model's being taken, across the country. We had Texas, which you visit our friend Glenn down there quite a bit. I see the posts, and ESAs and school choice is now the mantra down in Texas.
But it's interesting. It took a really long time to get that through, they had to basically purge center-right members of that legislature.
I was just going to say it took Ted Cruz with some of his own PAC money, primarying a lot of people in the legislature.
And what I worry about...
And boasting about it on his own podcast.
What I worry about for Texas, and when I say worry, I actually take some spiteful glee in, is now you have these people who that was their issue, was the ESAs. And then they're going to have to confront Texas's growing economy and their incentive programs. And they're not exactly pro-corporate, not exactly pro-business. Yeah. So, I've been giving Glenn a little bit of a hard time. I'm like, get ready, man. Your politics are getting to be where ours are, as you change your legislature.
Well, it doesn't help that every Californian is fleeing to Texas and Arizona and bringing their politics with them.
A lot are coming to Arizona, but, the registration numbers do not bear that out. They have not come here, registered as Democrats, or anything else.
They are remembering why they left.
I
love those billboards. Do you guys pay for those billboards?
No. I mean, we've done signs in the past. We've done the California or Arizona signs, and we're actually going to have I think a pretty neat event where the leader of the California Assembly, James Gallagher, is a very good friend of mine. We want to bring him out and do how not to become us and where we went wrong and go through a history.
Well, I mean, we can digress here just a little bit, but it's getting worse in California.
It is, yeah.
They just passed another gas tax.
That's
that directly affects people. Don't probably realize, but that does affect prices here in Phoenix.
Oh, 100%.
Because we get a lot of our gas here in Phoenix. It's really interesting. I don't think a lot of people know this, that Tucson has gas prices probably $1.50 cheaper than Phoenix. And people are like, why is that? Well, because there's a pipeline coming directly from Texas all the way to Tucson. Not so lucky here in the city of Maricopa.
We have no refineries here in Arizona, so it's all about where we get our gas from. And you're right. We've been looking at lawsuits with California over this and what it's doing to our interstate commerce. But it's not just that. I mean, they're passing ridiculous wage increases. They're passing insurance mandates. They're doing one thing after another. In fact, your old business...
They're rioting in the streets.
Yeah, forget the lawlessness for a second. Your old business, I won't get into which distributor, but we have a distributor on our board who just shut down their California lines of operation. And that was like a $2 billion...
Oh, that was RNDC.
You said it.
Yeah.
In sales. And
I know those guys.
Yeah.
I've a lot of ex-AB guys went to go work for them, and they lost... they lost some lines, and then they weren't able to sustain their business.
It's too expensive to do business in California. And, they didn't sell those lines. I mean, they just dropped it over a weekend. And that's how ridiculous. We just had an announcement. We got a new apparel company headquartered in California moving here. It's 200 jobs, $27 million capex, but still something to brag about. We'll take it. Just like we got Dutch Brothers from Oregon. Oregon's a disaster when it comes to business policy.
That is an amazing story right there in terms of Dutch Brothers coming down here and being very, very forthright about why they were leaving Oregon.
I love it.
I mean, they're saying it is a mess. We're tired of dealing with the mess. We're going to Arizona where the air's clean and the streets are clean, and they care about business.
They do care about, and that's a company with deep ties to Oregon. I mean, there was a dairy farm, two brothers who weren't making a lot of money, so they started to, make a coffee stand. It's a great story, and now it's Arizona's story because Oregon, has bad policy.
Yeah, I've spent a lot of money indirectly at Dutch Brothers over the years, funding my daughter's addiction to whatever they put in those drinks that are pure sugar.
And my wife and daughter Hope love Dutch Brothers. I'm much more of when I go to a coffee place, I don't want to talk to anybody.
Have you ever had their coffee? It's really not that great.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's delicious. They're an Arizona company now. We love everything they do.
Their coffee is amazing, but you have to put like a ton of syrup, sugar, foam, whatever else in it.
I'm just more in the model of when I go get coffee, I don't want to have a conversation. I just want to sit in coffee and wake up and come into my own presence. But Dutch Brothers are so friendly. They have that, and people like that. People like that.
Well, you can see it by the lines around the corners.
Yeah.
I mean, people will line up forever.
It's a great business model, and it's another publicly, to have another traded company here in Arizona headquartered. It's a huge win for us.
But you see this. I mean, this is actually a great segue. You see what's happening in California. You see what's happening in Oregon. And now we just had a political earthquake happen in New York City with the nomination, but the possible election of a jihadist, leftist, anti-Semite. I mean, you can just whatever ism you want to put in front of Mandami, you can. What's your take on that?
I mean, the exodus from New York, I saw Glenn trying to say, come to Texas. No, I mean, Florida has picked up that, we get California. Yeah. Florida gets all the New Yorkers. I just think it's going to continue. Brickell Avenue, right, where I once, lived close to, it's my hometown, is now like Wall Street. There's skyscrapers up and down. All the finance companies are there now. All the banks are moving there. All the wealth is there. And this is just going to drive that. This guy is a step in the wrong direction for New York City. It's a signal that they're not taking the policies that are hurting them very seriously. And so I think it's going to continue.
It's
sad, Chris. Governor Ducey always said that he quoted Ronald Reagan, right? That if the Pilgrims landed in California, they never would have gone anywhere else. It's this beautiful place. It's worth fighting for. I mean, New York City is one of the greatest city. It's, arguably our Rome, right? It's the powerhouse of America and this shining example. To see what's happening to it, I do not like. I want to see it get turned around. I wish it would turn itself around. I don't know what it will take for it to turn around.
It seemed like after de Blasio that Adams has his faults, but he was trying to at least get the trash picked up on time and at least expand funding for the police and give them the support they need, especially around Times Square and where the tourists are and different neighborhoods. And he who knows what will happen, but it seems like Mandami will actually win the mayorship. And then if he implements just half of what he wants to do, it's going to make the 1970s just look like a cakewalk.
Yeah, I don't know who's going to pay for that. Honestly, I don't know who's going to pay for everything.
There's not going to be any 1%ers left.
No, and it by the way, his win sets a precedent for, I think, Senator Schumer losing to AOC in a future primary.
Why would AOC run for president when she can take out Chucky Schumer?
Yeah, that would be the scalp.
Even the president is blasting him, calling him a resident of Palestine.
Yeah,
which is unbelievable.
It's a strange world we're living in right now. So you're right. That's a shockwave. It shows we cannot write off the progressive left. We can't say because the pendulum swung so far to the right with President Trump and his thing and what he's been doing, that just maybe is empowering that side of, you got to watch that wing too. Just like people said, oh, they can never take power. Well, people said that about Trump and he's back. So yeah.
Oh yeah. I heard something about that today, that the left cheered when Trump came down the escalator and the golden escalator,
I remember. No one thought he could win
10 years ago, and nobody thought they could win. They were cheering for him, and then it was a complete, total earthquake.
For every state office, I listened to your guys' interview with our friend Congressman Biggs, who I worked very closely with when he was Senate President. Anyone who says he can't win, stop. Stop saying things like that. Anybody can win. We're in a day and age where all the old rules, all the Peggy Noonan wrote a very great piece about the establishment being dead. And I think that's 100% true. And I mean, the establishment is responsible for the creation of the Trump lane because they didn't deliver on things, and now we're kind of seeing that played out. And so anyone can win in this world we're in.
Well, yeah. And I think Trump gets this, he gets his moniker as this big conservative, but he's not. He really is quite moderate.
Oh, yeah.
On so many policies. I mean, just go right to a policy that you're very concerned about, and that's tariffs.
Yeah.
But the Democrats were for tariffs before Trump was for tariffs.
But as the macroeconomics guest lecturer Ben Stein would say, right, at Pepperdine where I went, tariffs was solved. I mean, but post the NAFTA time, you had Democrats, Republicans, everyone saying, you know what, the model is working for America. We're 5% of the world's population, but 25% of the world's economy, and essentially the world works for us. We've become more of a service economy here, where we still retain advanced manufacturing and everything else, and President Trump's done a really great job refocusing us on that. But making things cheaply, all that's done elsewhere, and then we buy it, and the trade deficit just strengthens the dollar. That's kind of where we had landed until President Trump came along. Now everything's being rethought, everything's being challenged, and to try and make sense of it, or heads or tails of what the real goal is, has been a real challenge. And I know he seems every bit of his word about loving to make deals. We're watching it play out right now. It's almost like the old model. I'm not saying he's trying to be king, but in the medieval days, there was the petition the king model, and the king would rule on every dispute. I feel like he loves that. I think he loves being the one to arbitrate deals, whether it's tariffs, treaties, ceasefires, you name it.
NATO. He just had a great NATO meeting where they completely kissed the ring.
It was wild because I was in the Netherlands up until the day before he came on our own trade mission, which the Netherlands is a top 4 trading partner with Arizona, and Dutch people are great. We have a very storied relationship with them. I mean, ASM's been here for 4 decades. ASML has a role here. NXP, a lot of their big companies. They all used to be Philips back in the day. Now they're all split up in individual groups. It's exciting. They were very curious to see how this NATO meeting was going to play out, and everyone's trying to figure out what President Trump's end goal is. And, it's very simply just to keep saying he wants the best deal for America. He wants to be able to say he got the best deal for America. I think we can dispute what that might look like, but that's his goal. That's his North Star.
Well, I mean, the fact that he was able to get them to, at least in concept, agree to increase their defense spending over the next 10 years to 5% of GDP, that's a major win for him. Yeah. That's been an argument that most presidents have tried to get there, but haven't been able to get.
Yeah, no, again, I think you have to give him credit for leveraging, I would say leveraging our economy and our goods and services in a way that he's getting, the other countries to contribute more on things like that. I think some past presidents didn't care as much because they felt like with the more spending came more control. But we had seen that not being very true. So I give President Trump a lot of credit. Listen, he's doing a lot of great things. The EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin, who's been out here with us, he's single-handedly rescued our economy from an issue not a lot of people understood on air quality, and that's 100%.
Why don't you talk a little bit about that? Because I don't think that's not even on people's radar.
Oh my gosh, we keep it off.
And that was a bipartisan initiative.
Yeah,
I mean, Senator Kelly was there, Ruben Gallego was there, and these are people who don't agree with Lee Zeldin on the color of the sky.
No,
but this was an issue that the chamber, to its credit, helped lead on. Why don't you tell our listeners?
So for 10 years, in Arizona, you always hear this nonsense about us not having water, and we know that's not the case. Yeah,
you don't need to go there,
right?
With me.
But secretly,
I lived in Tucson, and the funniest thing was we don't have enough water. I'm like, we have lakes everywhere underground here.
We're the most we're the most well-managed state when it comes to water.
Oh my gosh.
We just passed another ag to urban bill this session that puts us in even a better position to negotiate on the Colorado River. It's in Arizona who's going to be leading that from within the Trump administration. Things are looking great on water. On air, we, for about a decade, have been in this hamster wheel of despair, existential threat. And what it amounts to, there's really two types of pollutants that come into our air. One's called PM 2.5, which is particulate matter. Think dust, things like that. So we get a lot of dust storms here. So natural occurrences, we
haboobs.
Yeah, exactly. We can only do so much.
All the Californians who move here all complain about the haboobs.
That's right.
We have car washes here too. So
yeah, that's right.
You'll be fine.
That's one. The other is ozone. And ozone is all these volatile organic, chemicals that go into our atmosphere, and they do impact our breathing. That's a true statement. But the problem is their own data shows that 80% of that pollution comes from outside of Maricopa County.
Yeah.
And yet our controls under EPA would only allow us to address what was here. And we've been screaming this from the top of our lungs. We use NASA data to show, plus EPA data to show it was coming from Southeast Asia, a big portion of it. And we're like, why will you punish?
Imagine that.
Why will you punish us for China? Because you're enabling their economy. And Lee Zeldin, the day he got in, took those meetings from us, allowed us to set this up. You got to give Senator Kelly and Senator Gallego, which you already did, credit. They voted for him to confirm. We had 2 Democrat senators vote to confirm a Trump nominee, big deal. And they helped bring him out. And when he came out, he heard from Governor Ducey, Governor Hobbs. So 1 Democrat, 1 Republican. He heard from a bipartisan delegation, the entire business community. And he said, I've never experienced one state all saying the same thing.
Yeah.
And they immediately looked into it, and they had this guidance on, can we be exempted from international transport pollution? And they took it down. I mean, that was powerful, and that instantaneously changed the trajectory. TSMC's $165 billion announcement shortly thereafter, because now we have a path forward on everything. It's huge, and that is 100% because of President Trump appointing the right person to that job. That doesn't mean we have to agree, in my opinion, with everything he does. I think it's fair to say I don't understand what the end game is for tariffs, and I can make the case on why they're hurting people. We're seeing the increases.
You don't want to tariff tomatoes more?
I do not. I was waiting for this to come up.
Well, you gave me the great segue, and to be clear, I had no idea this was a big of an issue as it is until my fair co-host sent me a little
I love it.
outline as to what is it called? The
Tomato suspension.
Tomato Suspension Act, which poses a serious risk to the U.S. food supply, according to this memo, consumer prices, and economic stability. And apparently this act is going to be suspended by the Department of Commerce.
It's interesting, and the people who I want to hear from on this are actually the producers themselves.
Sure.
Is this something you think benefits you? Because in this whole tariff debate, farmers get brought up all the time. Oh, it's unfair that Canada has a 200% tariff on dairy or
butter.
Whatever. Yeah. But in reality, no, it's actually seasonally timed out. There's quotas set. It's intensely complicated. When we did USMCA, all this was taken into account, and the farmers seem relatively pleased. I've never heard farmers themselves complain. So I want to check in with our tomato producers. I think Arizona ranks 6th in terms of production and sales on tomato.
See, that is amazing information just there. Nobody would ever thought that.
Yeah, no, it's true. But yet you're right. If you go to the grocery store, you'll see most of the time you're getting your tomatoes from Mexico, not from Arizona, and that's because of these seasonal agreements. Now, if we were talking about lettuce, we're number 1. We're producing lettuce, the winter lettuce for 80% of the world in Yuma. So all this stuff really matters, and I really defer. I would tell Sean, let's defer to the farmers on this. Let's stop speaking for them until they tell me this is an issue. I'm surprised to see it. I want to understand it a little bit better. But I think I was telling you, before we started, there's a long history that's very interesting with tomatoes and tariffs and produce and tariffs. There's a very famous Supreme Court case that determined whether a tomato was a fruit or a vegetable for purposes of tariffs. And, ironically, even though scientifically it's a fruit, the court held it was a vegetable because people in their vernacular treat it as a vegetable. So there you go.
Who would have known?
Who would have known? Yeah. Useless knowledge that resurfaces, in tariffs talk.
So what do you say to the counter argument on something like vehicles, where, and this is an argument I made on the show several times in terms of how do you equalize tariffs and market availability, which I think is a huge issue still for several industries. For instance, like you can walk down here to Scottsdale Mercedes, buy whatever Mercedes you could ever dream of. You can order it from the factory in Germany. You can't do that in Germany when it comes to American cars. And then if you do are able to import an American car, there's a 25% tariff on top of that. The number 1 American vehicle is the F-150. Only recently, in 2022, can you order an F-150 to be shipped from America to Germany through a third party, not a dedicated dealer.
I think it's interesting. Couple things. First off, the most important thing historically to Americans has been our ability to buy goods cheaper, our ability to have choice. You know, when you said you can walk in and buy a Mercedes, you can, but you could also buy a Ford, you could buy a Kia, you could buy anything, a Toyota, you could buy anything you want, and based on your price point and what matters to you as a consumer. And that's a great thing about our country.
Yes.
You know, and you know why we can do
Agreed.
that? Because all these other countries are making it, and even the Ford F-150, it's not It's I can't even remember the percentages now, but so many of its parts come from elsewhere.
Yes.
So again, the first thing I always want to say when we talk about tariffs is I have to hammer this home. I recently had a reporter say it's very controversial, Danny, when you're out there saying that Americans are the ones who are going to pay these tariffs, because that doesn't seem to be what the administration is saying. And I'm like, that's not controversial.
Yeah.
It is, not open to interpretation. It is clear as day. When you import something, when you receive it in the mail, that's when you pay that tariff. And so that is it's an American company, whoever else. It's us who pay the tariffs. The other country does not pay those tariffs, which is why you're seeing price increases in Walmart right now, why you're seeing price increases on Amazon. And as we come closer to Christmas, that's when you're really going to start to feel it. And I mean, we saw the president tweet out, or post on Truth Social, Walmart shouldn't do these price increases. They should eat some of these costs because they've made money. Well, now you have the president of the United States telling the country's largest private employer that they need to, not make a profit.
Yeah. Eat the cost. Eat the cost of their inputs.
And that's
and we certainly don't see that with taxes. I mean, we've seen that before.
And so that's the thing to remember too.
Tariffs are taxes.
They are, Chris. And so when we're going to hear all these big numbers that tariffs have brought in, and they're going to be bragging about it. Look at all this money. That's us paying that. You've just found a different way. When they said they were going to do this external revenue service, I laughed. I'm like, it doesn't matter. They're still collecting from Americans. We're not making more money overseas. So the counter argument, is there better deals out there? I'm sure there is. But, Chris, I don't know that Ford is going to all of a sudden have a big breakthrough in Vietnam if Vietnam equals out their tariffs.
Yeah.
And you can buy direct on Ford F-150. Because you want to know why? We don't make goods cheaply here. We have labor laws. We have a lot of different things that drive up the cost of making stuff. If we do this American-made iPhone thing, what do they say? It's going to be $5,000 to buy an iPhone if you have to buy 100% made in America.
Yeah.
Not to mention a lot of what goes in here, magnets, silicon. We don't even have the smelters, refineries, all that stuff is still coming from Southeast Asia. So we are not set up to do what the administration is hoping to do. But I'll say this, maybe it puts us in a trajectory where we have more of our own supply chain, not so dependent on, one market. We do realize that we have vulnerabilities. COVID really made that clear. So it has led to a realization that we need to do a better job of not being dependent on Southeast Asia, on semiconductors and other things like that. But make no mistake, pharmaceuticals
is a big one.
Huge one. Yeah. So we need
big one.
We'll continue to do better on all of that, and I think that's the positive I'll say we're gonna get from tariffs. But I grew up reading Milton Friedman. I grew up with Buckley, and I've never been.
You and I both.
Yeah, and I have not been convinced otherwise. What I find is the people who are 100% going to support President Trump will do mental gymnastics to justify tariffs, instead saying, you know what, on this one, I don't agree with him. Kind of like you're seeing some of the isolationists say, on Iran and Israel, I don't agree with him, but everything else is great. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, given that, and I think there's a lot of hope for this big, beautiful bill that will offset some of those concerns about tariffs and extending the Trump tax cuts and also the work that the Office of Management and Budget is doing on just basic regulations, business regulations.
I mean,
what are you seeing in that front?
First of all, the extension of the TCJA right now into the one big beautiful bill, as it's called, is hugely important. I mean, you can tie our the TSMC investments and things like that. Go back to when manufacturing started to have a resurgence. It's 2017, which was the passage of the TCJA. It was lowering our corporate income tax, right? Following the rule that we know and love from economists, that capital goes where it's most wanted and stays where it's most welcome. When America lowered its corporate income tax, that was a huge signal to the rest of the world, come invest with us. I mean, Ireland had been lowering theirs. All these other countries were lowering theirs. We need to be competitive.
We didn't even lower it enough.
We did
I would
not.
argue.
No, I would.
Ireland's was like 15%.
Yeah. And
so ours is still not there.
And they're the fastest growing manufacturing.
And they have no tax on capital.
That's true. Now
The rest of the world has figured out we're not going to tax your capital gains.
It's 100% true. But they do have things like value,
VATs
value.
and everything
But you know
else.
what, Chris, I don't know. Maybe tariffs are a little bit of a VAT tax right now. Maybe we are paying consumption and production taxes. So
there's an argument to be said for that.
Our economy is shifting a little bit. So I'm nervous on that. And the thing that I'll say though too is it changes every day. I mean, during the course of this conversation, maybe they changed their mind on tomatoes. I mean, who knows? And that's not good for business. You're a business guy. You don't plan your business 90 days out in advance.
No.
And people who are buying billions of dollars worth of equipment, let's say you build a semiconductor fab. A lot of that equipment, especially lithographs, comes from the Netherlands. I'm not going to buy hundreds of millions of dollars worth of lithographs if tariffs are going to drive up that cost. A bank won't finance it because there's no force majeure clause for Trump changing his mind, President Trump changing his mind. So we need certainty. We need to lock in some certainty now.
That is one of the great aspects of the big beautiful bill on the Senate side is that they're making a lot of these tax cuts permanent.
And I'm a huge fan of that.
Yeah.
Because
this, and I totally agree, because this whole thing of sunsetting tax decreases is insane.
It is, because then it starts this argument that this adds to the deficit. No. These are tax cuts that have been there for a decade. We're keeping them going. I don't like that.
Keep them permanent, and that's going to inspire even more economic
That's
growth.
not intellectually honest to say it adds to the deficit.
Well, who said the Congressional Budget Office was ever intellectually honest?
Yeah.
I think we said it on the last show. They missed the impact of the initial set of tax cuts in 2017 by like 1.2 trillion or something crazy.
It's huge, and we're very supportive.
What's a couple trillion between
we're very
big
supportive.
spenders.
Yeah, we're very supportive of all of that. What they're doing with Medicaid in there too, we're watching that closely. We're not wild about the way every state that did Medicaid expansion did it differently. In Arizona, access program is very unique. It's a very privately driven model, and we want to make sure we don't get hit with too much top-down instructions that really hurts our hospitals from being able to do a good job.
But you're for able-bodied people
100%.
being forced to work who have no business being on Medicaid.
100%. But Chris, when we were in the Ducey administration, and I managed the federal office for Governor Ducey, we were all about trying to get a waiver for that. And I went with other members of our administration to D.C., met with CMS, sat through Senate Finance testimony on what was really happening with these work requirements. And you look at Arkansas and Georgia. And I know you're a person who, you're a man of faith, you have a heart, and you're compassionate. And it broke my heart to see that some of what was happening with these work requirements, it wasn't getting able-bodied people to work. It was forcing parents who are already overburdened with paperwork, if they have a developmentally disabled child or some kind of debilitating condition that is just so wound up in paperwork, they were getting so overwhelmed, they were dropping off.
Yeah.
We heard about that from a couple families, and you don't want that to happen. I mean, you and I both know how these parents are warriors for their kids.
Listen, streamlining regulations is something that
make it easier.
We can all be for.
Yeah, make it easier. I know that if I have to spend time on the phone with a bureaucrat to get something done, it's exhausting.
No.
And I think about my mom, fighting with insurance companies for my brother and I when we were little kids, up all night on the phone, being on hold, getting dropped, starting over again. And that's just how you force people to give up.
Yeah.
And we can't have that. So, able-bodied people 100% need to be at work and can't be mooching, but we don't want to overburden people.
Yeah. And so what's your prediction for our fair state over the next several months?
Well,
we're gearing up for the next gubernatorial election.
Yeah, it's exciting. I feel like love to do this with Sean again when he's here to give him some questions on this. But here's what I think. Let me just.
Are you surprised by the polling?
No, not at all.
On the Republican side.
No, not at all. I think Congressman Biggs is much more of a household name with the right. He is well known in the Turning Point crowd. And I think the endorsement coming from President Trump was very predictable.
Well, Trump doesn't want to be seen as picking a loser.
Yeah.
If the polling is that stark, and that's sort of his instinct.
That's part of it. So I'm not surprised by it. I'm not surprised at all, to be honest. What I will say is I'm curious to see where we as a country are when that election comes up, because all the historical trends say it's very hard to knock out an incumbent governor, when the opposite party is in control of the White House.
Yes.
It's all the reverse coattail stuff. Now, I think President Trump breaks all those rules. I think all those norms, you can just throw them out the window, unless, of course, people are just fed up and they see a vote for, Governor Hobbs, who, by the way, on the economy has, people can yell at me all I want. She's done a good job. She hasn't rolled back.
Well, she hasn't. I mean, what you were just going to say, I'm sorry to interrupt.
She hasn't rolled back, yeah.
She hasn't proposed the things that would absolutely, doom her. Her incumbency.
And, it's interesting because she was
rolling back the flat taxes that Ducey rightfully implemented that has been a boon for our economies, why these companies are moving here, why people are moving here. She has not proposed.
No, she has not. But where you stand on something
to her credit
depends where you sit. And
yeah.
She wasn't for the ACA. She voted against it when she was in the Senate. So I think being governor, seeing what it means to the economy, seeing what these policies and programs mean, she's been supportive, and I'll take that. I'll take that all day and twice on Sunday. But let me say something nice about each of the candidates, if I can. Let me be different.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think Karen.
Or you are the president of the chamber. You need to be somewhat
my
bipartisan and neutral.
Yeah, and Chris, as you know, our board requires 65% endorsing. Was very hard for a statewide to do that. But I think just as Governor Hobbs is doing a good job with the economy, Karen Taylor Robson is known for that. She knows the commercial real estate market.
Sure.
She knows development. She's a former board member. She has a deep history with our state and its economy, and I think would do a fantastic job on those issues. I do think people writing off Andy Biggs for being too far right is a mistake. I think you can go to when he was Senate president. He worked with people. He governed. He sat in a seat, got called Rhino for working with Governor Ducey, but he did what he had to do to govern a body. So again, I think it's a mistake to write him off as well. I think Andy Biggs is someone who has shown he'll do what he has to do to govern, his state or his body. So I think there's positives for each of the three right now. I think after this session, where I would argue Governor Hobbs had a good session, I think smart money is still on her as an incumbent. I think the polling shows Andy Biggs beating KTR right now, and then I think it'll be a very tough election for both of them. I think it'll be interesting to watch how it plays out. And I honestly don't know. I don't know what happens at the governor level. The AG race is going to be interesting.
AG race will be very interesting.
Yeah, we
had Rodney Glassman on the show
I heard
ago.
He's always a lot of fun.
He seems to have matured.
You have a history with him down in Tucson.
I have a long history with Rodney.
I do too. And it's all from
we all do. Everyone in the state has a history with Rodney.
It's all mostly positive. I think he's a good person who has good intentions.
He has a good heart.
He has a good heart. Yeah.
And one thing going back to the Mamdani victory, though, if you look at what that proved, politics. Philosophy aside.
Yeah.
He won that race doing old school politics,
mm-hmm.
which is creating a message,
grassroots, yeah,
and grassroots, knocking on doors, kissing babies, going to areas where people probably would not vote for him normally, but decide to give him a chance. And so much, people would like to say, "Well, I've raised $1 bazillion," and it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
it really what matters what you've done on the ground.
Ground and motivation.
Yes.
Can you turn voters out? Are you inspiring them? And that's again for the AG race. Let's just look at it. I think Warren Peterson, by the way, has done a good job.
Yes.
I should have said
sure.
On EPA, he was huge on that too. He went to, we might have been the first ones there, but he was second there on EPA. He was present for all the Lee Zeldin meetings. His staff, Josh Credit, phenomenal job getting the Senate on board on all of these things. So he's been there for all the issues on these water negotiations. Colorado River's coming up. He's at every meeting. The big issues that matter to Arizona, President Peterson has been all over from day one. So I think
that says a lot.
It says a lot. And I think that's something Rodney would have to overcome. And then you go to Chris. Chris Mays has not missed any opportunities to get media on the types of issues she takes up. The AGs always get to be the tip of the spear against the opposite party, president. So that helps her out in a lot of ways.
Well,
right?
but also to be the tip of the spear against the business community.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. She's probably suing 18 of my members right now as we speak. And
so I don't see the Arizona Chamber endorsing Chris Mays.
No,
regardless of who's on the other side.
That's probably true.
I'm just gonna make a prediction. It's gonna be bold, but I don't see the Arizona Chamber board coming out in favor of Chris Mays.
But can I tell you something that's interesting about her? For whatever it's worth, anytime we ask, she comes. She'll show up, she'll sit down, she'll take tough questions from the board. People she is literally going after on what I would argue are bogus enforcement actions. She'll sit there and she stands the firing squad. And I give her credit for that. She doesn't hide behind philosophy or anything else. Her, Dan Barr, Bill Mundell, they're very available to the business community. We don't like their answers. We don't love their answers.
They're coming after us.
No,
but gosh,
no,
but they do it with a smile.
They do it with a smile, but they're accessible. We've talked to them about tariffs. We've had conversations. I give her credit for that because sometimes people are just outright nasty and not inclusive, and that has not been her.
Yeah.
Now, do I wish she would stop suing us? Yes, I would love it if she would stop suing us. It'd be super. We beg her not to sue the EPA and other administration things. So they're like, it's going really well. Don't be the bad apple here. But no, she's a lot of fun to talk to. You should have her on. I bet she would come on and spar with you guys. She would.
We would really like to know how she goes from Bob Stump, one of the great conservatives of Arizona history, to the AG's office as a liberal Democrat.
And she's passionate about environmental issues, and I think she's wrong on nearly all of them. But, I like talking to her about it. She's intelligent. She's fun to talk to. She would be a good guest on your show. But I think Warren has really done a good job positioning himself on policy issues around that office.
Yeah.
So,
It's going to be an interesting race. Yeah. It's going to be definitely a horse race.
For sure.
Well, Danny, thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate you always coming on. I appreciate the friendship, appreciate the rapport. And appreciate the great work the Arizona Chamber does. And let's say you're a small business, you know nothing about the Arizona Chamber. What would you say to them? In terms of the benefits of joining the Arizona Chamber.
Sure. What the Chamber does, we're advocacy is our headshot concept to put in business terms. We fight to make this the #1 state to do business in, and that's us at our core. I've trimmed anything that moves us off of that mission one way or the other. We are laser focused on making sure that we're advancing policies that make our state, the #1 state to come here, grow your business, relocate your business, sell your business, retire, everything. We are all in for Arizona. And I got to tell you, Chris, we had a great session. Despite all these challenges, despite split government, you look at our priorities, whether it was securitization, which helps keep, Arizona's got the #2 most reliable power grid in the country. And that matters on these economic development. I love giving Texas a hard time.
Yeah, it matters, especially when we want to be the hub for AI.
100%. People are like, what's the SoftBank $1 trillion investment?
Look what just happened, the announcement that happened in New York the other day with Kathy Hochul saying we're going to build nuclear power plants because our grid can't hold up to the things we want to bring into the state.
And what's great about that? We have the largest nuclear power plant in North America here in Arizona, Palo Verde. We
sell power to California.
We sell excess power to California. We have capacity for more reactors. But, there's big news coming from our utilities. They're going all in on gas. They're going all in on, with this new administration, slowing down rollbacks that date back to Chris Mays' regulations. So yes. I think the power is a huge thing. So that's what the Chamber does. We fight for you, whatever your issue is. It could be big. It could be small. We take on the Axon case. We don't ever want anything that's going to give Arizona a black eye, and they weren't even a member at the start of session. Vi Resort, this anti-growth movement that's happening. We went out to Glendale and we fought and helped protect them on their 402 initiative, so they can build the world's largest resort here in Glendale. That's huge. That's what we do, and we fight for. We just got ranked #1 in the country for labor policy. That's us. This is the stuff we fight for. We're a right-to-work state. We fight hard for all these things, and that's what you get from membership with us. And we love our big members. We love our small members. We honestly, we love working with everyone, hearing what their needs are, what's keeping them up at night, make sure we can get solutions. We solve problems.
Yeah. I'm one person, and even I'm a member of the Arizona Chamber because I'm crazy enough to
we need more entrepreneurs. It's a growth area and a growth mindset. So yeah, we're working on, we've been talking about this for a while, but we have big plans. And actually I hate to say this, I got a really good idea when I was in Texas on how they use someone like you. So we can talk more about that later. But yeah, absolutely. I'm super excited to do it. And tell Sean, I want to give him a hard time about some things. So he's got to be here. I've been listening to some of what he's been saying, and I'm like, I have questions, Sean.
Well, we enjoy having you on. You give us the pulse of the business community, and certainly with the elections coming on, we'll have you back.
Well, I really appreciate it. It's great to be on. You guys, honestly, I love intellectual discussions. It's what you do so well. It's my favorite. Yeah.
No, we're happy to do it, and it brings us joy. We figured it out the other day. Why have we been doing this for so long? You know what? It brings us joy.
You're like the firing line of political podcasts, and I love it. I never know if I'm gonna get to talk about faith or anything else. Things I love talking about.
We can talk about faith. Maybe some other time.
Yeah. Anytime. Yeah.
All right. Well, God bless you, and God bless your family, and thanks so much for all you do for our state.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening. God bless.